He had started off with saying, hey, let's be more adventurous in the bedroom. And again, that woman that gave her power away said, I'll do whatever you want. Just stay here. Just focus on me. Let me be enough.
Welcome to OTR, Over the Rainbow, Achieving Mental Health for Real. This podcast offers hope to many people who needlessly suffer from mental health issues. Your host, Bob Adelman, interviews experts like doctors, counselors, and life artists who give helpful tips on living a happier life. But most importantly, Bob interviews ordinary people who have suffered with a mental health issue. Each one has recovered to lead a much happier life. You can do it too. Bob's notes on today's show followed.
Today, I speak with Michelle Shekhinah, author of the book From the Floor to the Door. This is the first in a series called Sleeping with the Enemy about spousal domestic violence, which is a big problem that goes silent when a person is trapped and dependent in a relationship. After a bold move to leave her home and her life and still take care of her dependent children, Michelle became an advocate and mentor for other women and teens that have experienced any form of trauma and abuse. You can contact her from her website if you are struggling in a similar situation. A simple email may be enough to change your life for the better.
Now, here's Bob with today's show.
Hi, Michelle. How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Hi, Bob. Thanks so much. I appreciate your inviting me.
Could you tell the listener a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. So I am a woman who was married for quite a while, over 20 years, and I am a healthcare worker. I am a survivor of domestic violence. I have 2 children and a wonderful family that supports me now, thankfully. Being a survivor, what happened was I was happily married, or so I thought. I was happily married for a good 16 to 17 years, and then something changed. I realized that there were things going on kind of behind my back or to the side with my former husband that didn't seem right. And I had spoken to him, and then I found out that he was using drugs.
Oh, boy.
And here it was. I'm raising a household. I'm supporting him with his businesses. I had some of my own. I was, a PTA president. I was a room mom. I was a community volunteer. I was doing all of that.
How old were your kids when you found this out?
My kids were in their teens. They're adults now. They were in their teens.
Okay.
And so I was, at that time, a different person than I am now. I was very much a people pleaser, as everyone says now. It's like a key phrase.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have the confidence because he was really and is still very, very smart. He did what's called grooming, which means that he created this facade of who he was. With me. He knew all of my insecurities and exploited them, not only, in front of me, but to other people. And he made me very dependent on him as far as emotionally, financially, all of that, because I was a stay-at-home mother. Even though I had a professional license, we had agreed, or mostly he had agreed, that I would not work. Because that's part of the control. So at this point, I had noticed his attention was not as much on me. It was on other people. And as a lot of women do in the situation, I did everything I could to keep my marriage and my husband and my family intact.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, he took that and he rolled with it. And so he started making me use those drugs. And some people will say you had a choice. And unless you've been in that situation, especially as a woman who's given up all of her power, there's no choice. And if there's resistance, there's abuse.
Can I ask you what drug that was?
It was mostly cocaine.
Okay.
And it was something that I had never done. I never knew. I wasn't around it ever. I never saw it. I didn't understand any of it. And I didn't know that he did until he finally told me, oh, I used to do this in college. I was like, what? This is after, again, 17, 18 years of being married to this person.
And he never did it in those 17 years? Or
No, not that I'm aware.
Did he hide it?
He hid everything. I mean, he hid everything, which I have since found out. Either people have approached me with things that were going on, or I have found out through his Venmo account or health insurance, things that he was getting prescribed to him. So for him, it wasn't just cocaine. It was more than that.
Mm-hmm.
But going back, so what had happened was a very slow progression of him exploiting me and trafficking me to,
really?
yeah,
that's unbelievable,
to his friends.
No.
Yeah, because it was, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't even know the name of it. He had started off with saying, hey, let's be more adventurous in the bedroom. And again, that woman that gave her power away said, I'll do whatever you want. Just stay here. Just focus on me. Let me be enough.
Mm-hmm. And
really, I'm no longer that woman, obviously, and I feel for her. And, you know, we had talked a little bit about rituals. What I did was I buried her, you know, figuratively and literally with pictures,
mm-hmm.
and mourned for her. And that was about 6 years where that went on. And no was not an option. Many scenarios, some I remember, some I do not, and they come up at the strangest, oddest, worst times that I'll remember something.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, we breathe through those moments, and we pray, or we say a mantra, or we ground ourselves in that moment, realize I'm no longer in that situation. I cannot be physically harmed anymore. And I thank that old woman, that old gal, for surviving and hanging on for me.
I was wondering about your background. What were your parents like, and what were you like as a child? Okay. Do you remember that?
So I'm the youngest of many siblings, and I was the ugly duckling, so to speak, and the quieter one growing up. And my father was very, you know, strong, domineering. Being the youngest, I have a different relationship than the other ones going, you know, in front of me, because back in the day, you know, parents were extremely strict, extremely. And we did what we were told to do.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of that, obviously, in the background. So, you know, I went from that to my marriage. And, you know, luckily all of that has changed. I am the closest with my parents. My father is one of the closest people to me. And I realized the more we spend time together and we laugh together, which I did do as a teenager with him, the more I heal now.
I never really got close to my father too much.
Well, you know, the older generations were raised by the older generations. They went to the war. They went to the Depression. There was no, you know, Dr. Spock was the only one that had come out. And so, you know, there was, you know, the corporal punishment of children. There was hitting, there was spanking. There was, you know, even for some of us, you know, it was like letting your baby cry itself to sleep or what have you. And there's been so much research now where we know that that's not the case, because it messes us up as adults.
Yeah, you become dysfunctional just like your parents were.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And at some point, you know, you have to forgive them and realize they, for the most part, they did do the best they can.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, and my parents kind of switched when I was a teenager. They got to be, my father got less strict. My mother actually got more strict. And which is why I'm different than the rest of my siblings are, because I grew up with my mother being a strong woman. Whereas when my sisters were older, they didn't see that. They saw her being, you know, the one who catered to my father. for all those years. So we're all very different in that regard.
My mother pounded my sister, she's 7 years older, about everything. And me, talk about invisible, I'd come home 4:00 at night, 4 in the morning, and I was, 17, maybe 16, and she said nothing to me. So it's a different standard sometimes, especially in that era.
It's funny, people think the youngest children, I'm very big on family systems theory. I've studied it, and, people, with birth order, and the youngest child is usually seen as spoiled. But sometimes the youngest child is the one that is ignored, especially if there are multiple children.
I was both spoiled and ignored.
Right, exactly. And it's like the parents are done. They're done. They're tired. It's like the older one, oh, go take care of the other ones, that sort of thing.
Right,
and so it's conflicting for us as adults that, were we spoiled or were we ignored? And how does that affect our behaviors?
Yeah, I was definitely both because they ignored me, which means I didn't have to do anything. My mother did the wash and the cleaning, and I threw my clothes on the floor and they were folded in the dresser the next day or a day after.
Right.
So I did nothing. Maybe I washed the dishes, took the garbage out a couple times. I was super spoiled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
but you're right. But you were also ignored. So yeah. So that's a bit of a challenge. So my kids wish I ignored them.
Well, my mother liked babies, and my father didn't like children. He did it for her because she ruled the roost. And I mean, that's a theory, but I'm pretty sure it's right. My father did nothing without my mother's permission. And the way she did that, she would allow him to rant and rage and, be the rageaholic to everybody. Mm-hmm. She didn't protect us from him. And that was wrong. And I forgive her. Yeah. I forgive them. I forgive them both.
And forgiving really helps you, doesn't it? I mean, It has me for sure. I mean, when it comes to our parents, at least, the challenge is, like, for me, I'm still in the forgiving process of where I was and who I was married to. That's taking a little bit more time.
Yeah, it's going to be hard.
So that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah. So that was really a hard thing to take. Life's hard enough as it is. And so how did you get out of that situation? You just left one night or something?
Pretty much. So it was very gradual. Again, he was really, and he still is really sharp. He hurts me in ways now, which are more emotionally and financially. But how did I get out? I realized that if I didn't, I wouldn't be alive, because there was now, it wasn't just him. There were different groups of people, and it wasn't just him trying to manipulate me. And I realized that. And sometimes I would wake up, we would be out, and his friends would bring me a drink from the bar, or he'd make one at home and give it. It was never me making a cocktail if we were drinking socially or what have you. And there were moments when I'd wake up and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know whose house I was in. I didn't know I was on a bathroom floor. And, after having one half a cocktail, that doesn't happen. That's not normal. And I realized it was progressively getting worse.
Yeah.
And I knew at some point I was so fearful. And that's the whole from the floor to the door. Before that, those moments, I would spend many nights on my floor of my closet crying hysterically because he was emotionally abusive. If I said no, if I resisted, there was a lot of shame that he would say things to me, shameful things that weren't true. So I even started questioning my own reality. And then there was, the lack of sleep. He'd want to go out and stay out till 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. And then he'd sleep until 4 the next afternoon and want to go out again. Whereas I would wake up, if I even slept, and took care of my children. Mm-hmm. Because I was still that woman that got up and made food for them and did the laundry. I cleaned the house and did all these things. and he would still be sleeping. So there were some weekends that I would sleep 2 hours and that would be it. And so, yeah. And sometimes I would be on the floor pretending to sleep if we were at a friend's house and I knew what his objective was. And I could see him with the friends plotting and looking at me, and I knew there was something that he was trying to make happen for his own self. And
so he what they call gaslighted you.
Gaslighting. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. They all did around me. But I would be on the floor and I would pretend to sleep or pass out, or I would pretend to be sick and run to the bathroom, or I would make myself sick, because nobody's going to go near a woman who's been sick. You would hope not. That wasn't always the case with him, but you know, and so, you know, from the floor to the door, it was awful. And from the floor to the door, I walked out one day. I practically ran, and my children wouldn't come with me. And I did take my younger one. My son wouldn't, even though my son saw all the things that were happening.
How old was your younger one?
She was, I want to say she was 12 at the time.
Okay. So she was still a teenager.
Yeah. Maybe she was a little older. Maybe she was 13. She was a teenager.
But she went with you.
She went with me. So I left and I went to family, and she only stayed with me for 2 days because, I knew he wouldn't hurt the kids, or at least I don't think. It's a hard thing to prove. If there's no bruises, I mean, there was a hole in the wall. You know, I had other physical issues that he had done, physical things, but I thought that my kids would be safe. So I went to family and I stayed there. But what I did was I got up every morning, you know, before the sun came up, and I drove to the house that I had run from to wake up my daughter for school, to get her dressed and take her to her first year of high school.
Yeah.
And that was
crazy.
petrifying. That was petrifying. And there were some moments when we'd be walking out the door to take her to school, and he'd be walking in smelling and reeking of alcohol.
What did he say to you when you met him?
Oh,
or you didn't meet him?
I don't even know. I didn't, it would be like, and I would just be like, let's go out the door. Let's just go. I'd be like, welcome home, here, go to your room. And we would walk out and I wouldn't come back.
Okay.
So, you know, the big thing I've done was always kept in contact with my children. Even if I wasn't close with them, it would be calling, texting, sending pictures, you know, anything I could do. And of course, the stories that were told about me were horrific and insane and made no sense. And one child believed, one child, the older one believed it. The younger one didn't. And it, you know, right now we're so great because I worked hard on it. You know, I took my responsibility as a mother because I worked hard with my 2 kids. I mean, I have 2 special needs kids that I had to fight the school board for their rights. I was in the school as a volunteer for the teachers. I had a team of doctors around them. I mean, so that was my reality. That was my reality.
Yeah.
So when these things were happening to me, it's almost like it was a dream, like, cause it was so far from who I am and what I was going through. It's still, even when I talk about it now, it's hard for me to believe that I even stayed there or that it was even happening.
Did you feel like you didn't have any power, or that
definitely
somehow you were punishing yourself or something?
No. So here's what it was. And this is what, either, you know, again, the term narcissist is overused these days or whatever it is. Listen, we can call it anything we want, but evil is evil.
Yes.
So he was smart enough to do these things. And then the next 2 days, he'd be really sweet and kind and loving and give me the attention that he knew I wanted from him. And then, then it would be not being nice. And then it would be being nice. So I was swirling in my head. I was, you know, I didn't know what was reality and what wasn't at this point.
What was when you left, what was your avenue to recover? and become a better self?
Well, the first thing was because he had alienated me from my family and talked nothing positive about them for so many years, that I had kept them at bay. But when I ran to them and they saw the shape I was in, physically, emotionally, all of it, and I told them what had happened, because nobody in my life knew what was going on. In my real life, nobody knew. Oh yeah, nobody knew.
Wow.
It was just me. Yeah. So what did I do? I finally told them, my family first, and my close girlfriends, my friends that I've known since I was a child, because he had called everybody in my circle and told them stories about me.
Oh boy.
And yeah, so I had to really keep myself protected.
Yes.
As you and I have spoken about, I still do. So I told my family, and my family believed me, and they had questions, as most do. And I got myself checked out physically, and there were definitely some physical issues that I still have.
Like what happened physically?
Well, physically, I have breast implants, and I had just had them. He had ruptured the left one because he's right-handed, with being very physical, and I had just had them replaced in that 1 year, and then a few months after, it was the last time we were together. He grabbed me because he was very violent, and he was, he reeked of alcohol and what have you. And he grabbed me, and he just was it was bad. And he's a big guy, and I, pushed him off of me. And so I have that.
So it was a permanent injury then?
Yes. I mean, I have to go into I've already had major surgery because of it one time. I now have to go into another major surgery to get it, because I also have like silicone in my lymph nodes and things like that. So physical abuse looks different for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And aside from the glass being broken or the hole in the wall, unfortunately, a lot of this stuff is very silent. And that's why there's not as much knowledge about it. Where I lived, nobody knew. I put on a good face. I walked out the door. I still did what I had to do. And I looked the part. And I lived in a very predominant suburban neighborhood, and no one had any idea.
So what was the first thing that, after you confessed to your kids, how did they react? How did your children react to that?
So I didn't tell my children. My son actually doesn't know the whole truth still.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. Because of where he's at, he's still young in his own thinking. Again, we're dealing with children that have their own issues. So I respect that. And I'm not going to throw something at him that he can't emotionally handle right now.
No, you don't want
my
to do
daughter, that. Yeah. My daughter, who ironically is younger, but she's very intuitive. She figured the whole thing out, because she's also living with him part-time. She has seen him evolve in these 4 years, meaning he's gotten worse than he was with me, because now he thinks he's free. So his drug use has gotten worse, and his alcohol use has gotten worse, and his narcissism has gotten worse, and she sees it. So she no longer wants to be near him. And I tell her, it's still her father, and I want her to love him, because, again, I have to respect who she is, not him, God bless him, but her. And, no child should hate their parent.
So you want your kids back, pretty much? You want them back?
Well, I have them back.
Okay.
Because that was my first goal, is to make sure that my kids are okay. I knew that I would be okay. I knew that I would work it out. I knew that I had the support. I wanted my children to know that I'm still their mother. I'm still the same person I've always been. I'm even better and stronger. I'll always be there for them no matter what. Because he was told, he told them all these other things. But they didn't really need to know the whole story. Not yet.
Okay.
Again, my daughter figured out. My son could not emotionally handle it because he still has that hero complex.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he still thinks his father is the hero, but deep down he knows it's different. Listen, when your father has you, calls you at 3, 4, 5 o'clock in the morning to pick him up from a bar when you have to go to work in 3 hours repetitively, somewhere along the line, the son's going to figure out something's not right.
And what did you do for yourself as far as getting emotionally stable? And
I do a lot. So the first thing I did actually is I went spiritual. I went straight to my roots of my religion, and it helps me. And every day after I took off my daughter to school, I went and I prayed. And it wasn't just the praying part. It was being in something that was familiar to me, but it was the community. It was the community of people around me that really, really helped me because they knew who I was, because I was very active in my community until he had said to me he didn't want to be around the people because they weren't as exciting as these other groups of people. And so here it is, I'm coming back, and they knew who the person I really am. And it really helped me was to get it's great to see you. How are you? We're here for you. You can do this. We believe in you. We support you.
That's great.
And yeah. And so that was number one. And then number two was I knew my nervous system was shot. I knew that from all the things that had gone on with me, that I was in a constant mode of panic at that point. It's changed a little bit because I worked hard on it over the last 5 years. But I knew that chemically I had to get some assistance. So I went to a psychiatrist and I started on medication, and that really helped me. And again, as a healthcare worker, I knew that this was going on. And so women in distress was a very big component in feeling safe and in getting therapy. And unfortunately, this was all before COVID. Okay. So it was a few months before COVID. And so I was very engrossed in all of that. And then COVID hit and everything was shut down, of course. And
you had virtual meetings, right? Or no?
I did. But I will tell you, and I switched then to another organization that could offer me a little bit of financial assistance. I went to, and these were places that I used to donate to and volunteer for. And it was so unbelievably humbling. And there was a bit of shame to it, but I was so grateful for the help that I was getting, knowing that I would be on the other side once again, but with experience now of what those people, when they walk into a food bank or when someone goes to get therapy, there's a bit of a shame there. There's a bit of I can't believe this is my life now. And I've lived that. So I really want to be able to connect with those people because I understand it.
And was a lot of it group therapy, or did you have a counselor as well?
I have a counselor. I still do. As a matter of fact, I'm going to start with someone and so it's all with domestic violence, which if you've had any bit of trauma, it's all the same thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm about to start now with another organization, a school that does research and has doctoral students, because I'm a bit more aware now. And I've also had my own patients that I've been taking care of. And I've done a lot of women's healing groups, whether I've been attending or I've been facilitating them.
You're a life artist or a life coach?
Yes. Okay. It's actually more of like a trauma coach. So I've been an advocate. I've gone with women to the hospitals when they've been attacked. I've spoken to police officers for them, because when a woman is attacked or she's, escaped, her responses make her seem like she's crazy, as I've been told. And what happens also before a woman leaves, they're kind of conditioned, like I was, to look like they are. So it appears that they're out of their mind, so to speak. That's a terrible phrase, but it appears that they're not emotionally regulated. And so I'm there. And, I think that our healthcare workers and our police officers and, all of those guys are starting to really get more aware of what goes on.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard to prove sometimes. Family law is that the court system, the family systems is really tough sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's the men that go and it's not women. So I've been able to be there to be that voice for them and say, listen, I'm this and I'm that. I'm a healthcare worker. I've been there. I understand where they're at. This is what's happened. And because it's really, really important for their stories to be told and heard, especially in that moment. So, and then I've helped quite a few people virtually online in front of me, any sort of trauma, especially any sort of domestic violence. And again, it looks different for everybody. And I've worked with the LGBTQ community.
Okay.
There's a lot of kids and teenagers, young men especially, that have been abused. There's a lot of domestic violence in that community also, because there's a lot of pain and stigma, especially now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
It is. It's everywhere. And, there's a lot of parent alienation and, I'm like, come on, let's talk. I'm here for you. Let's talk. And we do. And we're able to work it out.
If somebody wanted to get out of a bad situation, what advice would you give them? Is that someone that would call you, right off the bat?
Mm-hmm. They could definitely call me. They could email me. I'm working on all of the website, the social media things, because I wanted to get myself out to help other people. And it's funny because I was talking to this with my sister. I'm usually a perfectionist. That was my previous, and I kind of fight that still, that everything has to be aligned. The stars have to be aligned for this to happen.
Yeah, I'm like that.
Right. Most of us are. But here it is. I was told, Deb, you should tell your story. Look at you. You're so strong. And I thought, okay. And I have to recognize that also. And I thought, I can't help people until I've got the website and the social media and all this. And then I woke up in the middle of the night, because it always happens then. You know what? Just do it.
Wow.
Just do it. And the rest will follow. And so here I am. But they can email me at, Michelle at fromthefloortothedoor.com.
Okay. And what does that mean? The floor to the door? Is that your?
Well, because because I'm in the process of writing a book.
Okay.
And I've written parts of it, which will be on the website.
What is the address of the website?
Michelle at From the Floor to the Door. I spent many nights on that floor until I ran out the door.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
If anybody wants or is in a situation like this, they probably could go right up to that website and get your number and everything, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, it's not completely up yet, but they can email me. I'm right there. I get, the notifications on my phone.
And I'll put all these links into the description of the show. Yeah. Okay. I mean, I think it's very, very good work that you're doing. I hope you keep it up. But I think it's really something that's needed. There are a lot of people out there that are in your situation. Yeah. So I hope I can reach some of those. And from what you said, you pretty much described, some people might not even know it's a problem in a sense. But
I didn't know it was. I had no idea. But, it's for anyone who's has trauma. The first thing I'm going to tell you, though, I'm going to leave with this, is trust your instincts.
Yes.
Don't let anyone, convince you otherwise. And then number 2, be prepared. In any situation that you need to get out, even if it doesn't look like this, even if it's something where you're disagreeing so much, you don't think you can go on, start preparing yourself emotionally, financially, legally, setting things up quietly in your car, whatever you need to do.
That's true.
So that it doesn't become too big of a problem. And it's like, you don't have to make that decision and get it all done. It's just something. And if you change your mind, it's not a big deal. And you work it out. Okay, you put the stuff back or whatever it is.
It's a very important message. Yeah. And there's so many people suffering silence.
Absolutely.
And like I always say, suffer needlessly.
Right.
That's what my program's about. Targeting people that suffer, that don't have to suffer. They say, well, you grow from suffering and all that. But there's enough problems out there that you can grow from. You don't have to be like me and have hand-washing rituals and all sorts of unbelievable pain.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, just know you're not alone. You're not alone.
Yeah, I know that now.
Yeah, and you're loved. You're loved.
Thank you.
I think you're a great guy with a great heart. So, thank you.
That's very nice to say. All right, have a good one.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.